All right, everybody, here's another case study for you. Oh, we need that. I just wanted to check in on some push-ups because the push-up progression, I think, is one of the more difficult parts of our progressions because there's a lot of different ways to do different push-up variations. Whereas, for a step up, like there's kind of really only one way to do it. So we're going to take a look at Parina's push-ups, and I think these are awesome. She's doing a lot of things really well, and there's some things that we can tune up. So let's watch a few, and then we'll go through these together. So hand position, ooh, the hands come in a little bit. We're going to talk about that. She's doing a good job of bending the elbows first. All right, so that's a few. Let's go back to the beginning here. So this start position, Marina's going to do one, and then, ooh, she scoots her hands in. So that's, I think that's super interesting because ideally for a push-up, what we're looking for is for your thumbs to be in your armpits. If you're too far out to the sides, it's really hard to keep your elbows, just like this, close to your body. So right now, Parina's elbows are pretty far away from her body. Let's look at the bottom position too. Right, so there's so much gap here. Sorry for the close-up there, Parina, but there's so much room between her elbows and her torso. It's going to make the push-up a lot more about the front of your shoulder and a lot less about your chest and your triceps. So it's going to lead to some shoulder pain maybe down the road. So another thing I want to look at here is the angle of her hands. Right now her hands are pointed out like that. What that is that's a compensatory pattern. That's her body trying to make it easier on herself because her elbows are out. By turning her hands out a little bit, she's almost forcing her elbows to come in, just not enough. It'd be a lot better if the elbows came in on their own and then the hands could be straight. Now, I got this video from Parina because she was talking about some wrist pain. That's something that a lot of us have talked about or have experienced at some point. And I think that's going on because her elbows are outside her hands. So if you see where her hand is planted on the ground, and then let's come all the way up. The elbows have to come in, you see that? So right now, that's a pretty hard outward, reverse your hard outward angle from the elbow down to the wrist, and her hand is turned so far out that everything is happening to the sides on her wrist. All that force is happening out here. So let's watch a few and see if you can see what I'm looking at here. Elbows go out, wrist is bending to the side instead of front and back. The wrist really likes to do this. It doesn't like to do that very much. So that's part of where I think some of this wrist stuff is coming from. Let's look at a few more. Parina's going to look like you're doing a million push-ups. You're super fit. It's going to be good. Let's look at a few more and look at her torso angle. So it's a little bit tough with this angle. It's a little bit hard to tell. But what I'm seeing is that her shoulders are coming up first and her hips are coming up afterwards. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here, where her shoulders stop moving and then her hips continue to move. So let's watch that slow. So we're going to come up. So here's where the shoulders stop moving, but there's still hip movement going on, right? So that tells me that Parina's doing kind of this inchworm seesaw effect on these push-ups. That's not ideal, but I think that's it's kind of a side effect of this wrist and shoulder and elbow stuff we got going on. So Parina, and for anybody else who's having a hard time with these push-ups, or maybe it's not a movement you do very often until now, because we're doing them a lot, try to keep your thumbs in your armpits and your elbows tucked in really, really close as you're doing these. It's going to be harder at first, that's for sure, because you're changing your shoulder angle. It's going to be harder, but I promise it's worth it. And that's the point of these progressions is we're going to work up to something that's very tough. We're going to make sure that you're doing it correctly, and by doing it correctly, you're going to get better and better and better. We're going to move on. So thank you very much, Parina, for being a guinea pig here. These are overall really, really good push-ups. There's just some things that we want to tweak. So if you have more questions about any of the progressions, including the push-ups or anything else, please leave them in the comments. Let me know. Again, you guys giving me feedback on this content is the best way for me to give you what you actually want to hear. So leave it in the comments. Let me know. Keep training.